Yeah.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. As you know, Scotty Talks NBA is brought to you by DSM Media. You can find DSM Media on social media at DSM_media. That's on Twitter, at DSM Media on TikTok, and at DSM.DoSomethingMajor on Instagram. I am accompanied here today by one of my favorite guests that I get to have on the show from time to time, my man Sean Barnard. How are you doing, my friend? What is going on with you?
Doing well, man. It's been a while, so I'm excited to chop it up and talk with you again. But life is good, can't complain, and always good to be chatting NBA and Sixers.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it, man. And yeah, we haven't talked since like mid-season, I feel like, or at least towards the end of the regular season.
Yeah.
So I haven't even, aside from listening to your pod, obviously, if you guys haven't checked Sean out on Pick Swap Pod, definitely check that out. You can also follow the media company at Pick Swap Media on Twitter. Definitely check them out. They're starting to dabble into all the sports around Philly and into all the leagues across the sports spectrum. But nonetheless, aside from that, I have not been able to, talk to you directly and get your thoughts on the Sixers, especially. But we're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into the offseason so far across the league. First, just want to plug Sean once again. Obviously, I said at Pick Swap Media. He's got a ton going on. We definitely got to plug you. You're a contributor at Clutch Points app. So that I know that's been a huge opportunity for you and a little bit of an adjustment. And then, of course, you're still the lead Sixers writer at Philadelphia Sports Network as well. So you're staying busy, man. Is there anything I'm missing across the spectrum of all your work, my man?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. So, yeah, you can pretty much find my stuff everywhere online. Philly Sports Network for all the Sixers content, kind of all general NBA and NFL stuff for Clutch Points. So all the written stuff there, and then Pick Swap Media on YouTube. Check out all the social medias as well. So, yeah, you nailed it.
Awesome, Sean. Thank you once again for joining. We're going to start biggest news of the offseason, I think, at least. KD requests a trade out of Brooklyn, man. Is this the biggest surprise? Were you surprised by this move or by this request, I should say?
Yeah, I actually was. It was weird, just kind of the timeline of things. Obviously, the Nets have been kind of somewhat of a mess since kind of dating back to the past couple seasons, and I really do think the big three era of the James Harden, the Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving is going to go down as one of the biggest fails in terms of a team building aspect in NBA history. So I was kind of shocked just to see KD he seemed like the one guy that was in it for the long haul. So to see him request out and stick it out and just not want a part of it again, I was surprised to see that. I think he's probably the best player to ever hit the trade market with that, considering how he has 4 years left on his deal, how he's on the contract already, and just obviously the quality of talent he is. So it definitely is a market-changing movement. We've kind of seen the NBA world freeze while all this kind of unfolds. So it's been surprising. It's been interesting. And I think we still got a long way to go before it's over.
Yeah, no, and I tend to agree with you there. And it's funny you bring up the 4 years left on his contract because he's locked in. Like there's no options. There's no like trade clause, anything like that. So like he's locked in. The Nets can take their time because they don't have to please KD in this situation. In reality, they may still have to in the end, but they technically don't have to. Just to your point about, this kind of being unprecedented when you talk about a player of the caliber of KD locked in for 4 more years. We kind of saw it with Ben Simmons. He's not to the level of KD, obviously, but he was still locked into a contract where he had several years on that extension left. How does that change the landscape of the entire NBA when it comes to star players getting it, whatever the hell they want? Because I'm like you, I didn't see KD throwing the towel in this quick on Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think the next CBA is going to be an absolute bloodbath. I think there's going to be some real careful phrasing with how contracts can be handled and what the outs look like for individual players, because we have seen the pendulum swing a great deal in the other direction. And obviously, everyone's in favor of like player empowerment, but there comes a point where it's kind of like a situation where it might be way too disruptive, and we're seeing that more and more. It's becoming more common for stars to kind of be able to at their whatever whim they're feeling, kind of pick a new time to find a new place. And we're seeing this with KD. But like you kind of mentioned, like the Nets don't have any real responsibility to trade them in terms of legality and the contract. And we saw Ben Simmons obviously force his hand by sitting out and refusing to play. I personally don't think KD is that guy. I think he'll continue to show up and play. Yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that still at least will show up and play, even if that is his intentions. And I also think, considering like what the package would have to look like to get Kevin Durant, like what other teams would have to give up, I don't see another situation that would be better than Brooklyn is for him right now, for him to actually compete for a title. So it is a very unique situation and definitely unprecedented waters, but it's super interesting to watch.
It is. It is interesting to watch. And I do tend to agree with you, you know, especially when you talk about teams like if it would be Miami, if it would be Phoenix, right? And now this Utah news with Donovan Mitchell, it kind of changes the landscape again, makes other things maybe available there that maybe weren't before. I think to your point, you know, if you look at Phoenix, what would they give up to get Kevin Durant? You know, I don't think there's a package that Brooklyn would accept from Phoenix straight up. But even if there was, right, it would be DeAndre Ayton, it would be Mikal Bridges, it would be Cameron Johnson. I can't remember if I got his name wrong there. I'm sorry if I did. Picks, right? So, like, while that isn't the best deal, obviously, for Brooklyn, that would still uproot the Phoenix Suns in a sense. You'd still have Booker, CP3, and Kevin Durant at the end of it, though, so you wouldn't complain. But I do wonder, do you think there's any way that Utah gets involved in this? Now, obviously, I don't think they would be interested in bringing back KD just because it seems like they're headed towards a rebuild. But is there any way they could, like, swoop in your mind and be that third team that could maybe get this thing going?
Yeah, I think definitely. The Knicks have gotten a lot of buzz for wanting Donovan Mitchell. I think there could be a pretty like hefty trade between multiple teams that like Utah would be looking to collect kind of the picks and all the future pieces aspect of things. But I definitely think that's probably the most likely solution to this, is it's kind of a multi-team trade where, because I looking around for all these deals, there isn't really like a clean swap between the teams. Like you just talked about with Kevin Durant. And the other thing to keep in mind with the Nets is they don't have the option of like going back into rebuilding mode, because they traded in the James Harden deal, they traded 3 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps. So they can't go into tank mode because that does them no good. Those aren't their picks to have. So I think like the only real solution is obviously the Nets are going to try and continue to compete. Who knows how it all shakes out, but I think there's going to be a lot of teams involved.
Yeah, and you know, it is interesting to think about. It's going to be fun to see how the KD situation plays out. Obviously, the Mitchell adds another caveat there. In the Knicks, they got like 8 first-round picks, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, after we just saw Rudy Gobert go for, you know, obviously Mitchell might command a little bit more, if not a lot more, than Rudy Gobert. Speaking of Rudy Gobert, one of the bigger surprises of the offseason, I would say, at least to Minnesota, what they gave up. What would you say is one of your bigger surprises between like DeJounte Murray to the Hawks? There's been a couple big moves. Malcolm Brogdon to the Boston Celtics, and they got him for, you know, what I consider close to nothing.
Yeah.
What has surprised you so far about this offseason?
There's been a lot. I think the Gobert probably has shocked me the most, just based on like, obviously he's a high quality caliber player. I'm not questioning that, but I that was more than I would have expected his kind of going rate to be. Brogdon, I agree with you. I felt the opposite. His rate was lower than what I expected. I thought he's worth more than what that trade. I think that was a terrific move by the Celtics to add him because of they needed point guard was really their position of weakness in the finals run last year, and they didn't really have a guy that can properly run the offense. So I think that was a great addition. But I think Gobert would be my biggest surprise is the answer. And it's obviously interesting as the NBA continues to get smaller to see the Timberwolves kind of zag. It reminds me a little bit of the Pelicans like a couple years ago when they did the Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins pairing. I think the Cat and Gobert will be a better fitting duo. Usually I'm pretty anti like doubling down on size with that, but we're seeing some teams where it works. The Cavs are another team that have leaned into getting lengthy guys, getting tall players. So it'll be interesting. We're going to see way more of kind of Cat as like a spot up shooter, which is pretty crazy, but he's good enough to do it from that job. So it's going to be fun to watch that team and see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and I thought it was amazing because it kind of shows me how bought in they are in Ant Edwards. I mean, I think they know he's ready to go right now, and they're ready to like shoot for the stars now. Obviously, I wouldn't put them up there in the top contenders of the NBA, but they got a pretty good team, and Rudy Gobert makes them better. It's just that long term. What does that look like if you don't even get to the Western Conference Finals in that span? So it's risky, but I guess they're putting all their cards in right now, and they're going for it. Aside from that, what did you think of the DeJounte Murray trade? Because I thought that one is an interesting fit. You put like a kind of a more versatile defensive-minded guard next to Trae Young, who's obviously one of the most dynamic offensive guards in the NBA. How do you think that fit works with Atlanta? Do you think that they got better overall? Like, how does that team favor in your eyes in the Eastern Conference?
I wasn't a fan of it on first instinct. I've kind of warmed up to it a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest DeJounte Murray guy. I think he's a fine player, a very good player, but I don't think he's necessarily like that tier of like elevating your team to the next level.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how him and Trae Young work. I'm also of the mindset. I think the best aspect of Trae Young's game is his passing ability and the way that he just is so creative with the way he sets things up. So like adding a secondary ball handler is not like the way to go in my mind. Like I think the ball should stay in Trae Young's hands as much as possible. Like as much as he gets credit for what a deep range shooter and 3-point shooter, and he obviously is very good as a scorer as well. The way he play makes to me is what always just pops off the page.
Yeah.
So I would like that to continue his role. But if Murray and Trae Young can find the balance and click together, like it is something that has a lot of appeal. The defensive side of things is, I think, the greatest aspect. Murray's obviously way more versatile, got long arms, good at getting in passing lanes, poking steal. So it's something I could see working. I think there's going to be a little bit of a growing pain period with it. And they're going to have to figure it out. But I respect the Hawks kind of going for it because I do think they like needed to do something.
Yeah, I agree. I think they needed to switch something up. They kind of stayed complacent last offseason after they took care of the Sixers and rightfully so. I guess you consider that your young core is going to grow. They kind of just didn't take the right steps to grow. And now they just turn in a different direction. DeJounte Murray's still young. So I was surprised by like how many picks, that kind of surprised me. But nonetheless, I think, like you said, it could end up working out for him. He's still young enough that he can improve. It is just a kind of a weird fit when you talk about DeJounte Murray. Is he going to be a spot-up shooter? Like, what is he doing in the offense when he doesn't have the ball in his hands? But nonetheless, it'll be interesting. I do want to ask you, and obviously, if you don't know anything more than me in this ballpark, I definitely understand. I was honestly just wondering, have you heard anything in regards to some of the bigger names that are kind of still out there on the market? DeAndre Ayton, Colin Sexton up in Cleveland. And then even I know Miles Bridges, he got into some stuff. So like, have you heard anything regarding those three names? Is Miles Bridges done? Like, is that something that gets you kicked out of the NBA for good? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, for Bridges, I heard he's got a court date on July 20th. And I think after that, there's going to be a more clear answer for what that looks like. Obviously, you don't want to make like a full judgment until we get the story and what exactly happened, but those aren't charges or stuff to be played with. So obviously, we'll see how the law clarifies and what the exact story is before I think NBA teams will make a call on that. But certainly not a good look for a guy going into his really first big contract, and could be his career ended there if depending on how this all shakes out. So that'll be interesting to see. DeAndre Ayton, I think he's going to end up in Indiana one way or another, whether it's by restricted free agent, if it is a sign and trade with Miles Turner and whatever makes that work. I think what's going on there is kind of the behind the scenes, like, what are you guys willing to match? Because it is interesting with Phoenix. Like, obviously DeAndre Ayton was the number 1 overall pick. He's at like the center has become such a devalued position, but he's improved each year and he's got a lot to like about his game. He's still like a 20-10 guy and can be like, that's not a guy you want to just let walk from your franchise for free. And I mean, we saw him get benched in Game 7 against the Mavs. There was obviously some issues with Monty Williams saying like he quit on the team, and it sounds like there's got to be some attitude stuff that's what's holding him back more than anything. But that's still like you don't get very far in the NBA if you're allowing like top talent to just walk away for free. So the best case scenario for Phoenix is definitely to work out some sort of sign and trade. DeAndre Ayton, I definitely think is a good bit better than Miles Turner, but that's not like an awful consolation prize if that's the situation. So I think one way or another he ends up in Indiana. Colin Sexton, I'm not sure I'm not sure about. He had the ACL tear, so I think that kind of made the market unclear. It wouldn't surprise me if he signs like a 1-year kind of prove it deal somewhere and then does the same dance next offseason.
I like that. And it's interesting with the DeAndre Ayton that you bring that up, because I was listening to a little bit on that. I think it was on NBA today. Just as far as Miles Turner coming from Indiana to Phoenix, that, like you said, that would be a great consolation prize when you in reality could get nothing. But they were also speaking about just the Indiana Pacers, and their owner is basically like really old school in the way he operates, and that he's not trying to just put an offer on the table to, see if Phoenix will match, just out of respect for his fellow owners. He doesn't want to undermine them with that process. So they're more desired to do a sign and trade, which I thought that was interesting, to have that type of loyalty to other owners that are competing against you. But I guess it's good to keep that good grace between the owners in that case. I don't know if you've heard anything about that.
Yeah, I saw that. I think it was nice the way he's kind of pushing it like that. I think the real kind of decision making is you have to go one or the other, whether it is a sign and trade or a restricted. If you sign an offer sheet and offer a restricted free agent, like they can't offer the free agent deal and then kind of go back on, all right, let's work a sign and trade. So you kind of got to pick your path there. I think that's probably more of the reason for the holdup.
Yeah,
I definitely don't think like having consideration for what other owners are thinking or would like in a move is really the way to build an NBA team.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, Indiana makes some weird decisions.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, one last thing before I get like some of your winners and losers from the offseason so far. Thoughts on John Wall to the Clippers? Does he add anything to that team in your eyes, or like what do you think about what he has left in the tank?
Yeah, I hope so. I was a John Wall guy back in the day when in his prime. Like, it shouldn't be forgotten. Like, in his day, he was legitimately a very good like top player in the NBA.
Man.
Yeah, and it's obviously such a unique situation with him really not even playing basketball for the past 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see what he has left in the tank. But it's definitely a great kind of low risk, high reward move for the Clippers. And they obviously got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard coming back fully healthy this year. I think that's going to be a scary team to mess with, even if you're just getting kind of like a quick scoring burst off the bench, or if he does start and just brings like a couple minutes a game where he kind of carries an offense. That's a great signing and something I'll be rooting for. I love John Wall, so I hope he does. And
you still there? Can you hear me, Sean?
Yeah, you're back now.
All right, cool. Apologies. We had some technical difficulties there, nonetheless. But I did hear your final statement regarding just the remaining thoughts on the John Wall. I'm with you. I'm rooting for John Wall in LA, and I do. I think they have a squad out there. They're just so deep as well, with just options to score the basketball, and they're versatile on defense as well. Just thinking as far as some of the extensions this offseason. So you had Zion, you had Zach LaVine, you had Darius Garland, Kat, Jokic, D-Book, Ja. You had Bradley Beal, obviously. Did any of those extensions surprise you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool. Like, I think I like how the NBA is kind of swaying toward like the homegrown talent being the priority and like locking these guys up long term. I think is a good thing. I think the Zion thing is very cool. I think that's like there's been so much chatter about like sign with the organization and not believing he has a long-term future in New Orleans, that I was happy to see him kind of reinforce that and sign that deal. And I do think he's like a better like just better person than he really has been given credit through the media. And I think he's had a lot of unfair slander his way, so I was happy about that. Jokic, obviously, you got to lock him up. He's essentially the franchise in Denver, and everything runs through him. Zach LaVine was the one that it interested me a little bit because I like Zach LaVine a lot, but it makes it, I don't know where exactly that Bulls team goes from here. Like, I think they're still not quite at that level. I like Zach LaVine, but I don't necessarily think he improves too much from where he's at right now. I think he's already a very good player, and that's kind of where he's going to sit at. DeMar DeRozan's obviously very good. Vucevic, I don't think has been quite the player that they've hoped, but he's still been solid for them. So I think they might be a little handcuffed, but overall, I mean, we talked earlier about how kind of players the contract maybe doesn't mean as much as it once did, but I think it is a good sign to see like teams kind of inking up their homegrown talent.
Yeah, and I think specifically with Chicago, you see them, they are kind of handcuffed as far as where do you go if you don't extend Zach LaVine as well? You know what I mean? Like if you don't offer him that max, who's available that you can possibly flip him for? So it was interesting. I think the one that it didn't surprise me, but I'm just like, man, Bradley Beal stuck in Washington. He may end up getting traded eventually anyways, but it was just surprising to see not even a discussion, right? Like of him, seeking elsewhere. So that was interesting. I wanted to get your thoughts, man. Winners of the offseason so far. And this can even go, you could even do it in a case of like winners of the NBA draft, because I haven't talked to you since then either. NBA draft, the offseason, whatever you prefer, but just winners this offseason so far.
I'll give the Thunder a winners. I love the direction they're going. I think Chet Holmgren's awesome. They got two different Jalen Williams, who I both really
That
love.
was awesome.
Yeah. The Arkansas Jalen Williams, I even like a little bit more of the second round one. I'm a huge fan of him. I think he's just awesome. He gives me like the Tyrese Maxey kind of vibes, and the way he plays the game, the personality, all that comes with it. Huge fan of him. I think the Thunder in a terrific spot for the way that they're building. I'll give the Timberwolves a little love, not really through the draft as much, but I think it was a good kind of home run move I think it was their time to do that as they kind of take this step. So I acknowledge that and give it respect. I thought the Grizzlies, I'll give them a winner label too. I thought they had a very good draft. Added Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, Kennedy Chandler, who I love in the second round. Three impressive talents there to walk away with them in the draft with like the young core that they have already. So I would probably label them as my top three winner. And the draft in general, I think there was a lot. I big time respect the Magic for going with Paolo Banchero, number one. I do think it's still a win for Houston to get Jabari Smith at 3. I honestly think he's a better fit there than he would have been in Orlando. So I think that's awesome. I think all the top 3 guys kind of landed in the spot that was best for them, which I think is cool.
Yeah, no, I love how you phrase that, especially about the top 3 guys, because I tend to agree with you. Now, Banchero, I think he could have worked in Houston too. Like he's just kind of NBA ready right now, so you can kind of see what his game is going to be. Whereas Jabari Smith, he's got to really figure out what he's going to do. Like, is he just a 3-and-D guy? I think he can be a lot more than that with his athleticism. But, I think I agree with you. Just out there running with those young boys in Houston, that's going to be good for him. Definitely. And Banchero gets his type of – he can be the guy on that Orlando team. The Rockets already have Jalen Green, so that's kind of their guy, right, going forward. And then, of course, Chet. I was leaning more towards the other two, but I can't deny Chet's potential and even what he's doing right now, what he's capable of doing. Obviously, he's just got to get a little bit bigger, but I mean, you see this all the time with guys coming in. Giannis came in small as hell. Look at him now, right? Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how all of these guys, and like you said, I thought it was a very, I guess you could call it a very deep draft. There was guys on the boards in the late, even in the early second round, and I'm like, you know what I mean? I wish the Sixers had a nice second round pick here to pick one of these guys up, but no. I actually like that the Sixers traded their pick as well for DeAnthony Melton. Mm-hmm. Just to tag along on some of the winners that you mentioned, I had Minnesota in there as well. I think even though I think it's a lot to give up for him, you go and you make the move, you make your team better. I can't deny them for that. Denver, I thought Denver had a pretty good offseason as well. I love the addition of Bruce Brown Jr., KCP and Ish Smith. I think KCP is a great fit. compared to what Will Barton and Monte Morris were bringing there. And then, of course, you lock up Jokic for the end of time, right? With a huge contract. And then you're going to get Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray back, which I don't know. I would be excited if I was a Denver fan. But I also had I had New Orleans on here because, you get to like you said, you touched on the Zion story. And I agree with you. I think a lot of his characters gotten misconstrued, especially I'm a Duke fan. You know that. I followed him a lot at Duke. And I know the type of kid he is. He's not the kid that these guys are describing in the media here.
Yeah.
And I was glad to see him kind of fall in line with New Orleans, and then also New Orleans just get what they kind of deserve. Towards a future, a successful future with the talent there. And then of course they were involved in that KD combo, which I think it's died down a little bit over the last week. I'm interested to see, are they going to extend CJ McCollum? Is that in the books here coming soon? Just, the veteran presence that he brought to them. But before we go to the Sixers, because I do want to get a little bit of thoughts from you on the Sixers. We've got to spend some time there. Any losers so far, just at the top of your head in the
Brooklyn Nets, probably, just because, we're just seeing it kind of fall apart. I even might throw the Lakers in there. I just because they're kind of so handcuffed in what they can do, like getting off Russell Westbrook's contract's the obvious, like what needs to happen, but to make that happen is such a hard task, and you would have to attach so much that it's difficult. So I would probably pin those two as my two biggest losers, and they essentially haven't neither one of them has done too much. I like the TJ Warren signing for Brooklyn. I think that was a good deal. There's been a couple like little margins, but in general, like it's a fall from graces from the two teams that were really pretty much the consensus favorites heading into last season. So it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I like those picks because the Lakers, like you said, they're just strapped right now with a $47 million Russell Westbrook, and the Nets, they've literally fallen from grace, as you mentioned there, with KD requesting out, the Kyrie Irving drama nonstop. So yeah, I would mark them as the losers. I also have Bradley Beal down here, just because it's a lose. He's stuck in no man's land out there in DC. And then I also just listed Miles Bridges and Rajon Rondo. They really messed up, man. And Rajon Rondo, his career's dwindling down anyways, but especially Miles Bridges. You were about to sign the biggest contract of your life, and it's probably not going to happen. You'll be lucky if you're still in the league after this. So, loser nonetheless. That sucks, but you do the crime, you gotta deal with the punishment. We'll see how that plays out. Sixers, I'll list off the additions so far. So you got PJ Tucker, you got DeAnthony Melton during the draft night, Daniel House, Trevlin Queen, which I do want to get your thoughts on him. I know you're high on him. Harden opting out. He's supposed to be taking less money. He hasn't signed the contract yet, but we'll see. And then, of course, Tobias and Matisse have been mentioned in trade rumors. Thoughts in general on the Sixers offseason so far? Has it been a success in your eyes, and how could it get better?
Yeah, I've been happy so far. I think it's cool. Like everyone gets so caught up in just like making like a one swing deal to like complete it, and really that's just not how like things play out. So I think it was cool to watch like Daryl Morey just kind of be calculated in how he goes through that. He obviously started with adding DeAnthony Melton in the draft, and it was like that's a great move, but like that's not quite enough. And then it's like then you add PJ Tucker, then you add Daniel House, and you see kind of the pieces coming together, and that he had a clear plan, which that's been really nice to see, and just refreshing to kind of have that kind of just set game plan and executing. The PJ Tucker thing, people get caught up in the money, but it was kind of you have to overpay to get him. The Sixers have been missing a PJ Tucker for so many years, and it's a guy that Joel Embiid mentioned by name following the Heat series, which PJ Tucker, I would argue, was the second most important player on that team that knocked the Sixers out of the playoffs. So to hear your superstar mention him by name and then to go out and get him, I think is a really good look as a general manager. And also he's a guy that very clearly complements both Embiid and Harden. So that's exactly what you're targeting. I'm thrilled with what I've seen so far, and I don't think Morey's done, considering there's 16 guys for 15 roster spots. I think there's going to be and Harden obviously hasn't signed his deal. There's very clearly a trust between Morey and Harden of working on the same page to make sure the roster is completed. So I think keeping that wiggle room. Harden isn't going to sign until I think Morey's exhausted all options is kind of how I'm looking at it.
Gotcha. So that's kind of what the waiting game is for there, just to see, should we make the contract a little bit less if we can make this move? Can we make it a little bit more if we don't make this move? That way both guys are happy. That is awesome. And just to, kind of pick up where you left off there, James Harden is the one that's, making this happen. What are your thoughts on him kind of taking this selfless approach? I'll put it in quotation marks. There's been a lot of rumors about Michael Rubin and his involvement in this. But obviously, nonetheless, James Harden opted out of 48 million for next season. He's going to take a lot less over a 2-year deal eventually. What are your thoughts of James Harden's, symbol of selflessness there? Oh, might have lost Sean again. Oh, we'll wait briefly here. Sorry about this, guys. Having a little bit of internet trouble here. Probably because of storm, I'd imagine. There we go.
I don't know what happened there, but sorry about that.
It's bad weather in the area. I don't know if you're like in the Philly range as well, but it's storming right now, so I would imagine that's probably what's doing it. Nonetheless, I believe. Did you hear the question regarding Harden? Just kind of what your thoughts are of him making that decision?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first off, like, give the guy credit. Like, you, as much as like obviously he's still going to be making like an insane amount of money. Like, it's not easy to just, even for a person who's made as much money as James Harden, it's not easy to just like swallow 15 million. And I'm sure it's being worked out behind the scenes. And like a lot of this, it sounds like it's gonna be a 1+1 deal. So this is him like betting on himself, which I think is a great thing for the Sixers, that we're getting a locked in version of James Harden. And B, like, he very easily could have bet on himself while making 47 million. So like he certainly could have opted in and gone all in on this season. And he's still James Harden. Like, there's still going to be a market for him, even though if he's not like the primetime MVP that maybe we hoped for, that we've seen in the past. But I give him a ton of credit for putting his money where his mouth is, doing whatever's needed to make this team a true contender. And I think he's endeared himself to the city for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's the right step to getting good with Philadelphia. That's for sure. Just as far as Tobias, just thinking about that, is that something that you think is mandatory this offseason, or have you kind of moved past that? Do you think that this team can play and win with Tobias Harris included on this roster?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's unlikely he gets moved. I think they probably head into the season with him. Tobias is coming off his best stretch of basketball, I would say, in those playoffs.
Yeah.
That was I'm sure the numbers weren't the best they've ever been, but that was like the most just effective team basketball I've ever seen him play. And in terms of just doing his job, quick decisions, being a willing spot up shooter, doing the corner, sitting in the corner, shooting threes, and defensively, he's improved a ton. So I personally have a little bit of concern about the PJ Tucker, Tobias Harris fit. I think Toby's best as a 4, and he's going to probably be looked at to play way more 3 this year. The longer he's here, the more tolerable, swallowable the contract is for another team. So if it's like halfway through the season and you're looking at a year and a half of Tobias, like, that's not that bad.
Right.
I don't mind the logic of like not exhausting all our resources this offseason and getting a look at the team and what exactly they're missing for what the flip is. I think Matisse is more likely to get traded just because I see his value decreasing based on, like, he's obviously going into the last year of his contract. He's extension eligible right now. If they don't extend him right now, which I don't think they should, then it's like you're trading for a potential free agent. So that makes it a little bit difficult too. But overall, I'm okay with the team as it is and at least seeing what everybody is on the court. And I'm not in a rush to kick Tobias out the door like I once was.
Yeah, I get that. I think I'm with you. You hit it on the head. The fit with PJ Tucker is the only concern, I would say. Right now, at least, just looking at the team on paper, I guess my only caveat to that would be maybe PJ Tucker doesn't play as many minutes as he would in the playoffs. But then at the same time, you got to see how they fit together. So nonetheless, they got to play together at some point. So Sixers obviously have had a good offseason in your eyes. Trevelin Queen, I do want to get your thoughts on him. Is there any thought that he could sneak into the rotation at all? Do you think that he's a guy that could earn his minutes? It is Doc Rivers, I know we're talking about here. But what are your thoughts as far as Trevelin Queen?
Yeah, I think he's a nice guy to kind of give a splash to. Like, he's a guy that can kind of, like, you just throw him in, he'll go get a couple buckets. He's a guy that you want as a bench option, like kind of just that like bucket getter hooper. That's who he is. I'm a big Trevlin Queen fan. I love just like the grittiness, the mentality he plays with. Awesome story when you like read into this is a guy who no college offers coming out of college, bounced to 3 different JUCO schools, was literally homeless for a period of time. And here he is with an NBA deal and money in his pocket. And he still plays with that same kind of grit and everything. I just love him. I don't think he's played his best so far in Summer League. I think he's tried to do a little too much at times in terms of like fitting 2 tough passes in windows, that kind of thing. But he is 25 years old, which I think it works in his favor for actually getting minutes, which kind of a rarity for here. But I like Trevlin Queen. I think there's a chance. I think there will be a couple games this season where he puts his fingerprints over the game and makes a strong impact.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that. And do you think this is a guy that could steal minutes? Maybe the minutes wouldn't even be there for Isaiah Joe. I know he's played well in the Summer League, got injured in that most recent game. I believe it was his shoulder, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Like Isaiah Joe versus Trevlin Queen, is that even a thing? Are they the 2 similar style players that would be in the rotation in the same spot? You know what I mean? Like, What are your thoughts on that? Would you lean more Trevlin Queen than Isaiah Joe even?
I think there's a place for both. I honestly think he might threaten Shake Milton a little more, which I'm not the biggest Shake guy. I think he's a little – he doesn't do that much for me. Kind of like there's games where what I like in a bench player is a guy that like goes in and just makes his presence felt. And like that's just not Shake. Like he's just a very smooth player. He's
not good at any particular – he's not like very good – he's not a very good shooter. He's not a very good ball in or a very good facilitator. He's not very good at anything. He's just average, it feels like.
Yeah, he's
just waiting for that development that just isn't happening.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it made sense to bring Shake back. Obviously, $1.9 million is a great deal for a rotational piece. But he's a guy I think his long-term future, like Queen, I think could do more in the same minutes, and I think he could threaten that. I would like to see Isaiah Joe get a chance this year, too. I think the thing that's very appealing about Isaiah Joe's game that the Sixers really don't have is him as a movement shooter, the way he just is able to shoot off screens. The Summer League have done a great job of calling pin downs, calling motion plays to just get him in a catch and shoot rhythm. And that's something like we kind of have seen it with Furkan and spurts, but that's something that just like reliably hasn't been there. And that'd be a cool asset to add to the offense. I don't think that's necessarily Queen. He's more of a put it on the floor, get a bucket, create his own shot. And there's still definitely a place for that on the Sixers team. So I could see him taking a little bit of Shake Milton's minutes for sure.
I like that idea. I like that. And I can see what you mean just by watching Trevlin Queen briefly in the Summer League so far. Final question for you, Sean, and then I will get you out of here, my man. I know I said 30 minutes. It always happens. Nonetheless, the backup center role, we know how important or unimportant that has been, depending on the time of the season, the last few seasons. Do you think that they're finished as far as they got Charles Bassey, they got Paul Reed? Are those the guys that are going to fulfill that backup center role going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I think worst case scenario, if these guys like very clearly aren't ready, you can find a backup center at the trade market or in free agency.
Right.
You can find a Doc Rivers backup center, a guy that like he would trust with that. I personally do believe in these guys. I think P-Ball Paul specifically, I just really believe in. And my mindset for the Sixers backup center has been Joel Embiid is obviously such a unique talent, and like having a center, there's just not centers like him. That I think getting a guy to just be like a worse version of Joel in the second unit is just not like a way to win. Like for how much he does on both sides of the ball for this team, you can't ask a guy to like play that role. So I like the mindset of playing like a different stylistic guy like Paul Reed, who is obviously way more switchable. He can guard on the perimeter. He's just pure madness in terms of getting his hands everywhere, doing just the little things, getting on the floor. Like that to me is kind of the way to battle like minutes without Joel, get a different look out of there. That's a way more versatile kind of offense. And he is a little bit like a small ball 5 and whatever you want to call it. But I believe in B-Ball Paul. I think he's moving in the right direction. And also like one of my frustrations from last year is we obviously saw he wasn't like 100% ready in the playoffs, but I think he might have been if he had been groomed correctly, like all throughout last year. So I think if you go through that process this year of like working through the growing pains with him, you could have like the guy you want as a backup come playoff time.
I agree. That's a great call out because that's exactly what I saw in the playoffs. A guy with potential to be exactly what you need. He just doesn't know how to do it yet because he hasn't gotten the time to learn it. And, it's just little things like little stupid fouls, jumping up in the air on pump fakes, little things that you just have to learn by playing. And I'm with you. I hope he gets that time. Can you just imagine like a Paul Reed and PJ Tucker lineup?
Yeah, it's awesome. I would love it. I love it.
It would be completely awesome, man. But Sean, I have no more questions for you. I know we're going to catch up again soon before we get into the real NBA season, maybe after Summer League concludes or something. But awesome having you on as always. You got so much knowledge on the game, and you're killing it across the board, man. Before I let you go, just let my people know where they can find you one more time before we get out of here, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Sean_Barnard1. You can check out the podcast, Pick Swap Podcast. It's under Pick Swap Media on YouTube. You can check out my written content on Philly Sports Network and Clutch Points app. You can download that. Give it a check out. It's got everything you need in terms of a little bit kind of Bleacher Report like and how it looks and how it's set up. But yeah, it's awesome. Always great to chat it up with you. Definitely got to get you on Pick Swap again soon.
Yeah, bro.
I'm always around to be talking. So I appreciate you having me on for real.
Of course, man. Just let me know when you need me, and you know I'm there, Sean. But that is going to be it, guys, for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA. It's a fun off-season edition. We have a lot of off-season to go. I'm sure there's moves to be made. There's a couple guys out there waiting, like KD, maybe Donovan Mitchell now can be moved. But until next time, guys, make sure to subscribe to DSM Media. We're trying to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. Head over to YouTube, subscribe, and be sure to check out all of Sean's content. Head over to Twitter. You can find him at Sean_Barnard1, and you'll be linked to all of his content. Once again, thank you, Sean, and that is going to be it for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA. Peace, everybody.